particular, but there's other things happening, and so tomorrow in the morning we'll have a circle, sharing circle, much more traditional kind of day, and then we've asked 3 or 4 people who are engaged with particular concerns and issues along the river to come and make short presentations, either just verbally or with we'll have the projector there if you have PowerPoint, and then have lunch, and then in the afternoon we'll focus looking at other forms of stewardship that community groups along the river do, whether it be restoration or just cleanups or monitoring, and then we phase into monitoring. So the keepers are trying to figure out what kind of river watch to put together. It would include both a reporting system, like we talked about, a phone-in toll-free number, but also are there some testing parameters are there gaps in what's being done by governments and industry and so on, and we know there are, and which ones might be affordable, such as doing selective dissolved oxygen sampling in low flow times like now. As long as we don't go out there and drown ourselves. Sampling at key points, mouth of the McLeod, the mouth of the Pembina, other places where we're worried about, say, too many cattle, too much nidification of the rivers, and so on. So that's the afternoon, but we're going to close the conference per se at 3 o'clock, and we will have a lunch at 12, and then at 3 we'll close the conference, and we're going to have a keepers board meeting, and anybody from the council who's interested, or anybody who would be interested in getting involved in the keepers, and we would greatly invite that. Some of us are hoping to step back a little bit. This conference, I was hoping, is going to be my retirement party, so I'm looking forward to young, energetic people coming forward to put their shoulder to the whatever. So that's it for tomorrow, and before I turn it over to our co-chairs here, I want to thank Katie and Jesse and Janice and all the rest of you who have helped so much get this little event going and keeping it going, and all of you for coming from great distances and nearby to engage and mainly have a conversation and meet kindred spirits. I used to feel really guilty when we didn't have 285 people filling up a theater, and friends would say, well, we're just speaking. If we don't, we're just talking to the converted again. I think we're into conversions, but I think most importantly, we need to get together regularly to support each other and to encourage each other. It's very easy to get down, to get burned out, and so just seeing each other face to face is a great joy and a great pickup. And speaking of which, 2 more of the original crew are here now. Peter came. You're not Peter. Peter Cyprian was one of the founders. Came with George that day, and Alan Adam, and some of the rest of you, Helene, and so on. June 2007, and he's been a co-chair the first year or so with myself and Cleo. And Cleo joined us just a month or 2 later. So I don't know who got her roped in or recruited, but they found her, I think, somewhere in McMurray, and thought that wow, she has an environmental education degree. She's a teacher, and just to come back to her mother's homeland from the West Coast, and she's having a hard time shaking this now. So Cleo was a co-chair as well, and so during that first year, we had a great team. We still do, but some of us are a little older and a little lower in battery energy, but trying to pump it up. And anyway, I've asked the 2 of them to co-chair this evening tonight. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Cleo Reece, and I'm originally from Fort McMurray area, Anzac, Alberta. I live there now. I've been away for many years. I've been living in BC, and I've been back home for now 4 years. And like Hardy said, I've been involved with Keepers since it started, 2007. And one of the co-chairs, and Peter also was one of the co-chairs in the very beginning. And I'm really happy to introduce our panel tonight. It's not exactly a traditional panel, I was told, but speakers and speaking from the heart. We have Sheila Muxlow from the Prairie Chapter of the Sierra Club in Edmonton, taking over from Lindsay Telfer, who is who's taken a maternity leave, and it's very good to see you, Sheila, and happy to have you with us. And I'll get Peter to introduce our other guests.
Hello everyone, my name is Peter Cyprian from Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. I currently live in Edmonton, and hopefully I'll be going back home to Fort Chipewyan. Plan to retire there, that's my plans now, but the way things are going, maybe things will change, I don't know. Maybe those ideas will be thrown out the window. I don't know. But I'm also one of the directors, was a co-chair, now a director of the Keepers of the Athabasca Alliance. And myself, Cleo, Harvey, and many others, George, Alan Adam, currently Chief of ACFN of Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. And Greenpeace here, Mike was there at the first meeting, a lot of others. Sierra Club, we formed the Keepers, and we started off doing some good work, getting some support from the All Chiefs of Alberta to support Keepers' work. We did a lot of, since then, for the first couple of years maybe, we worked hard, we got a lot of attention, and we did a lot of democratic work, as Mike was saying earlier. We did we demanded from the government, provincial government, federal government, the oil industry to change their ways, and and it has always just falls on deaf ears, and now we're hoping maybe we're going to bring it up a level, go more than just more direct action work, possibly. But anyways, that's who I am, and hopefully I'll continue to work for the Keepers, continue to volunteer my time with the Keepers. As Harvey was saying, some of us get tired, some of us lose our energy, I guess, working so hard, and really after a while, you'll see it's not really going anywhere because of the current government we have. They don't want to change the way they are doing things, and so kind of get burnt out. But anyways, I want to introduce Alice Martin, member of the Mixu Cree First Nations from Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. I believe she'll be talking on the sacredness of water and the Aboriginal right to water. It's very fitting. She had some education in law. She has a very strong spiritual connection. When we did our tour, we started our tour, and she started with her prayer up in the mountains, and we got it videoed, and it was awesome. She was using her pipe, and so she'll be speaking on that tonight. And I want to thank you all for coming, and hopefully you'll be here tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, can people hear me? Just me talking with my own voice, or do you want me to use the mic? Okay? All right, so as Cleo mentioned, I didn't really have anything prepared that in a typical panel format. I like to engage more with the audience and essentially put more of the work on you versus me to kind of throw out the information. So I'm here tonight to talk about water in Alberta, of course, but more specifically kind of grounded within the present review that's happening by the provincial government on water allocation and water management within the province. So as I've heard throughout these last couple of days, there's been a lot of talk about, kind of the issues around water that we're seeing not only up here in the north, but right across the province. And so, I'm kind of hoping to kind of go forward with my presentation to kind of think a little bit about the solutions to some of those problems. And then, of course, to introduce you to some of the ideas that the government has on the table in terms of those solutions to kind of give you that critical perspective. So before we get started, though, I want you to think of something fantastic in your life that you've experienced. One of those memorable, best moments that you've ever had in your life. So I want you to take about 10 seconds just to think, what was one of the best moments that you had in your life? And as one cheeky man said to me when I did this before, something other than losing your virginity. Okay. So think about that. Give you like 5 minutes, 5 seconds. and then I'm just, anybody want to share one of those ideas, one of those moments, those incredible moments that they've had in their life, and I'm talking, pretty much anything. Yes.
I live about 7 miles from the Simonette River. It's a river with a sandy bottom, and it rises in the foothills east of Grand Cache. So it's lovely and warm. It rises to about 23 or 24 degrees Celsius. And it's only 7 miles or about 10 or 12-minute drive. And as soon as you go over the hill and you go swimming, there's a swimming hole right under the bridge on the Forestry Trunk Road, and it's a special place. There's swallows nesting underneath the bridge, so there's never any mosquitoes there, and it's a great place to be.
Fantastic. Anybody else want to share an idea, something like that, an experience there? Yeah.
One time when I was about 16, I went out walking in a full moon night in the deep snow in the dead of January, and it was about 40 below. And I walked out back up on the ridge behind the hill where the horses were grazing, and they seen me coming, and they started to play, and they were all dancing and playing under the moonlight, and it was just a really beautiful scene.
That's very picturesque. Okay, one more. Sally?
This was just happened the other day. It got really warm, and I have pot-belly pigs. And of course a border collie, and I was out playing with my cows, and where the cows are, there's plywood along the fence, and here's these 2 black pot-belly pigs laying in the sun, just loving it. The dog comes I laughed for a couple minutes.
Oh, that's great. So now I want you all, because I'm sure you all have your those experiences in your mind now, and take just 10 more seconds to reflect now. How does water relate to that situation? And really think about those glaciers, think about that snowpack, think about that riverway, and the process by which it does relate to those best moments that you've had in your life. And the reason why I like to do this, to open this up, is to set a framework that really draws out how important water is as an element in absolutely every experience that we have in this life, and particularly those really incredible ones, whether it's being directly within like a beautiful clean pond, up on a hillside in an open space with animals, or like you said, appreciating some of our non-human beings and their experiences here on the planet. And I guess to build on what Keepers is all about, which is recognizing that water is a sacred element, and that it is something that's so fundamental and so important to us. So now moving from kind of that high point, I'm going to take you through some slides, just in a quick review of some of the state of water and where we're at in Alberta in terms of some of the problems we're facing right across the province. I'm not a hydrologist. My background is in political science, international development, and globalization studies. I'm not going to give you a lot of facts, but I'm hoping some of these pictures, and again, the information you've already had, will be easy enough for you to see the issues. So, a bit of a cryptic quote to start us off, but one that is important. So, here we are in Alberta. Everybody here is probably more familiar with this than I am. We have 7 major river basins. So right across Alberta, we're having issues of water. So we mentioned the tar sands, we mentioned the north quite a bit in these presentations, but right across the province we are seeing impacts from numerous things, and one of those is climate change. So I'm not sure if there has been a presentation on this, but you know, climate change is something that is affecting us here in Alberta quite drastically. You know, what we're essentially seeing is you know, an overall warming of the climate that is leading to a decrease in snowpack, which is essentially the water that, you know, fills our rivers in the spring and keeps us through the summer, you know, and kind of throughout the year. So we're seeing a decrease in snowpack, we're seeing an increase in evaporation, pulling that water out of there, and overall we're seeing just kind of decrease in glaciers and snowpacks. Like overall we're seeing low river flows right across our basin. So Dr. Schindler's done a lot of research on this, just looking at flows in our rivers, and overall data from 2008, 2007 to 2009. You know, we've really seen record low flows crossing all of our river basins at the moment. So what that's leading, you know, what that has caused in many parts of Alberta has been drought, and you know, just impacting a lot of our ecosystem spaces that were reliant on water, you know, in a way that is unfortunate. Just last year, I believe in the summer, there were 10 counties in Alberta that had to declare a state of emergency because of drought situations. I'm seeing nods, so that's good. I'm good on my facts. Okay, so another issue. So climate change is one, and I'm gonna, you know, keep this quick. It's over allocation. So Alberta has Canada's fastest growing population in the province. We have a pretty, if you want to call it, thriving economy. You know, it's booming. We got a lot of development interest happening within our province. Agriculture, I mean, more so in the south, but we have, you know, we have some of the largest cattle and pig farms in the country down in the south. Oil and gas, we have over 150,000 oil and gas wells throughout this province. You know, forestry is a major issue. I don't have my stats at the top of my head on that one, but unfortunately down to mining. So now this graph kind of allows us to expand on that a little bit in pointing out, you know, where our water is going in the province right now. So we started off with our climate change. We do have, you know, low flows. Water is a scarce resource. So we're allocating it to many uses within the province. So this is just a graph of where water is being allocated. Municipalities at the moment take up about 11% of Alberta's water in terms of what's allocated, and these are surface water allocations, just so you know. So these don't include groundwater allocations. This other big one here is cooling. So cooling is actually I thought that was a really interesting graph, and I wondered where that was going. Does anybody off the top of their head know where that cooling?
Steam. That takes more water than anything.
Steam, yeah, and coal-fired power plants. So Alberta has 7 coal-fired power plants in the province, and a good portion of our water goes to that. So that's another one. And irrigation. So we got that massive one for irrigation. So we have like 1.5 million acres of irrigated land in this province. I would love to say that that's going to you know, subsistence, small-scale organic farms, but it's not. As you can see, we have the agricultural little nub underneath there, which goes to show in those irrigation districts what we have golf courses, we have horse race tracks, we have shopping malls, we have a lot of things that right now water in our river basins is going to irrigate. Okay, so another problem. So we have climate change issues, we have over-allocation, and we have pollution. So pollution, I really like this image because it goes to show you know, how pollution works with our waterways, and you guys are probably, again, more familiar with this than I am. But, you know, we have concerns in terms of our municipal runoff, you know, so in terms of pharmaceuticals that we're seeing, and chemicals and fertilizers from municipalities going into our waterways. We are seeing elevated rates of pharmaceuticals. I believe it was last summer, there was a report that came out that we're seeing an increase in female fish, you know, being born than male fish. And I like to say, you know, I'm a self-claimed feminist, but when it comes to our ecosystems, you know, I think we need to like raise the flags when we're seeing the female population outweigh the male. Agricultural chemicals in runoff. Another big issue. You know, for our municipal water, we do treat our wastewater in many ways, but again, the pharmaceutical one we're not treating at the moment. But with agriculture, we don't. And again, down in the south, when there are those major large-scale farms, nitrates and bacteria flow off, you know, from our agricultural uses, and again have contaminated our streams and rivers. Looked up some stats, and there was, you know, 27 rivers in Alberta that at the moment are above healthy levels of nitrates in the water, and you know, and something to raise is that increased level of nitrates in our streams do lead to thyroid problems within people, as well as other cancers and digestive issues, and of course industrial carcinogens. So again, very familiar with tar sands and you know, the 11 million barrels or, you know, gallons a day that are leaked in, PAHs, mercury, arsenic, all that stuff. This comes off of you know, industrial runoff. That is a reality that's going into our waterways right now, and leading to things like okay, tap water you can light on fire. So this is a woman from Rosebud, Alberta, lives near coal bed methane development. She's been able to light her tap water on fire because of, you know, in her claims, the drilling has hit the aquifers and is leaching natural gas that exists down there into the waterways. Yeah, and yeah, government has liked to say that this is natural as well. I believe Sally, you were saying that, you know, it's a natural occurring thing, but she argues otherwise. And it has led to, you know, water that poisons our communities. So some of you might be familiar. This is the protest that took place in Fort Chipewyan. Some of the youth up there got together. But again, we know that's a problem. Now, the other major problem is that our water is being poorly governed in this province, and it is being poorly allocated. And you know, I think, you know, a major issue is our government tries to decouple water management to quantity allocation, to quality protection, to end use, and in doing so, they've essentially created these problems. So, you know, right now our water is allocated by a first-in-time, first-in-right principle. How many people are familiar with FITFER? Many people? Okay, fantastic. Essentially, it's a first-come, first-served principle. It was introduced in 1894. It was a water policy that came into play as, you know, first settlers were coming into this region and wanting to settle the land in places that didn't have a direct waterway beside it. And you know, we needed to determine a way of allocating water to do so. So first-in-time, first-in-right continues to govern us to this day, and in that we do not have protections for in-stream flows within our ecosystems, like within our rivers, and we have very limited protection for water as a human right. It's only in time of crisis that the government has the ability to kind of take water for human right use, but overall, you know, municipalities play into the first-in-time, first-in-right allocation system as any other license holder on an equal level.
Except for one instance,
yeah.
The First Peoples.
Yes, exactly.
They're
That's the ironic.
They're first in time, but they're not given that position.
Absolutely, that's the huge irony. So as you can see, we don't have deterrents for dirty water users in our present water law. We don't have protections for in-stream flow needs. We don't have respect for the rights of First Nations to free, prior, and informed consent on how this element is managed. We don't have priority uses for clean water users, and we have core enforcement. So some people might be familiar with the Water Act. In the Water Act, it calls for water conservation objectives to be set in all of our river basins. It also calls for basin-specific water management plans to be set up as the only set of matters and factors that a director in the Alberta government must use to determine where water is allocated. We only have a water conservation objective set in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, and that essentially came out of the fact that they almost pulled that river dry. And the basin-specific water management plan is another thing where we only have that in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, and again, because it came to a crisis moment, and they realized that they needed to have something better in place than this just a first-in-time, first-in-right system. So now, okay. So now I guess I wanted to put it back to you for a quick moment to just think about, okay, you get the context, hopefully, and in that in a quick little box of some of the problems that we're facing here in Alberta with our water. We have climate change issues, we have issues of over-allocation and allocation to uses that are essentially contaminating and polluting our water. What are some possible solutions to those problems? Anybody? I feel like people here probably have. Sure, Sally, you can.
Run over the director, that's mine.
Pardon?
Run over the director.
Run over the director.
I think we're gonna need to change our whole approach to irrigation. Like, that's a huge user of water, and the current system is very wasteful. It's causing a lot of problems, and there's trickle systems and stuff that are much more effective.
Yep.
Would require a lot of money to change over, and possibly there could be some kind of government program to help with that changeover, because it's very expensive to put in irrigation systems.
Yeah. Yep.
Put domestic water on as a top priority again.
Water use. Yep. Prioritize the water uses. So I don't want to spend too much time because we have a lot to talk about, and I really want to hear what Alice has to say on this, because I think a big component is let's engage with, the First Peoples who have been able to live in this territory and in this region and not bring themselves into a water crisis like we've seen today, and maybe take some of their knowledge and input. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. So what the government of Alberta has done, so they see this problem. Their biggest concern has been the over-allocation issue and the fact that, oh shoot, we're coming up to water shortages, and we have growing economic development that we want to see in the province. How are we going to allocate water to those development needs? So they in 2008 announced that they were going to do this review. Of course, instead of going to the public and asking for, giving them the context and asking for input, they commissioned 3 committees to provide them with recommendations. So one was the Alberta Water Research Institute, one was the Alberta Water Council, which many of you probably are familiar with. It's a multi-stakeholder organization. And one was a Minister Advisories Group. So these 3 groups released reports back in November 2009 with recommendations on where they think the Alberta government should go. Now I have to flag that in the Alberta Water Council there were many non-consensus items, and there were good people that were on that stakeholder group trying to push an agenda to see things shift in a more just way, but they were boxed in with government guidelines that they could not challenge the first-in-time, first-in-right system, but they had to make suggestions that would evolve that system. So, what? Okay, what did the experts say? So these are quick summaries, and I have some brochures. They're out on the table there, and I have the Google links to the reports. So they're really easy to pull up, and there are the clear recommendations. So take them and read them for yourself, if you'd like. But some of the key issues is, so these reports, they do recognize that in-stream flows are important. So they call for protected water, but none of the reports call for water to be protected above that of presently existing senior license holders. So right now in the tar sands, as an example, Syncrude and Suncor are senior license holders. They have grandfathered water licenses that were granted to them. They don't have any sort of deadline, like cutoff time. They can exist forever, and they are for quite significantly large water allocations. So, as we saw with the Phase 2 report, if there was a time of water shortage, and in-stream flows were not being met, Syncrude and Suncor are not, under present water law, held to an account that they have to stop taking water out of the river. Under present water law, present water allocation as it is, they are guaranteed priority access over that of the needs of the ecosystem. And so this is something that isn't in our water law, and the recommendations aren't suggesting that it go into our water law. The other concern is decreased public oversight with a tiered review process. So the way that water allocation takes place right now, there are 7 basins. There's a director for each basin. When a water transfer or new license is granted, there is a public notice that's put out, and essentially anyone from the public is allowed to submit a statement of concern, kind of intervene or participate in this process, however beneficial that is. But they want to the recommendations on the table that are concerning is that they want to see this repealed and a tiered review process put in, which would essentially allow for limited public input. And I guess I don't want to take too much time, but I can go into it later if anybody has questions. The third issue is treating water licenses like private property in a water market. So this is what we saw happen in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, is we essentially have in Alberta Canada's first water market, where these water licenses that were given to, that were granted to these license holders essentially for free, you know, back in the late 1800s, you know, they've been used, and these water licenses have become accustomed. Water license holders have been accustomed to, you know, holding this water. Facing shortages, you know, the government is looking to how do we reallocate some of that water? How do we get some of that water back? And instead of viewing and upholding that water as a commons, and you know, I guess kind of taking on their role as a responsible government to like see it managed to where it is needed most and to where it will benefit the public most. They want to introduce a water market and of course provide an incentive to license holders to effectively trade their licenses away to higher value uses. So essentially treating water like private property to, you know, buy, sell and trade to new uses. This is a big concern for us. I mean, essentially what it's doing is relegating where water goes on an ability to pay principle rather than a priority of uses principle. You know, there's many concerns with water markets. Again, we could get into that later if you want to, but it's on the table right now as recommendations for the Alberta government to expand from that existing water market that we have in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, see it generalized to the rest of the province. And with this decrease in public oversight, essentially, you know, introducing something that is very limitedly regulated, which again is very concerning. So, and then abolishing the need for planning and enforcement with water management plans. In the Minister Advisory's report, clear recommendation to abolish the need for water management plans before water transfers take place. And like I mentioned, in the Water Act, a water management plan is the only set of matters and factors that a director must consider in his review. And the water management plan in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, although it was controversial, particularly in the way that it disrespected First Nations rights, and it is a concern, but in it, there is a matter and factor that does now demand the consent from First Nations, which is ideal. But you know, it has other matters and factors that demand that a director review where the water is going. So if it's going to a new coal bed methane plant, you know, that director can use that matter and factor to say, well, you know what, this actually has an end use that will contaminate water, and then I can stop this allocation if, you know, if he was progressive enough. But unfortunately, you know, our government isn't right now. But in law, he or she could. But the recommendation on the table is to do away with the need for basin-specific water management plans. So again, okay. And then the final one is set up a private brokers to facilitate water trade. So this is another recommendation, very clear within the Minister Advisory's report, that says the way that we can start this water market and get trades happening with water license holders is for the government to hire a facilitator to set that up and to list out, you know, all the water licenses, how much water they have, and the water users, and you know, and to get them to kind of to know that the market is out there, and then to have that facilitator step back and let's see private brokers come into place, like we have in the real estate market. And they say that clearly in the recommendations, like we have in the real estate market. So again, just really crazy. Yeah. So okay. So yeah, nothing is a done deal. And then usually I go into some comments about, you know, the water commons and reviving a common sense and all this stuff. But I think what we're gonna do is, you know, I'm hand it over to Alice and hear, you know, maybe within this context of what we're seeing the government do with water, and you know, building off of that frame that hopefully all in this room recognize that water is sacred and it is something that's essential, not just for our economic uses and to go to higher value uses, but for many other things. and how, you know, from an Aboriginal perspective, Indigenous perspective and knowledge, there's, you know, some other ways that we could be going forward with the way that we're working with the water in this province.
Hello, my name is Alice Martin. I'm from Fort Chip. I'm from Fort Chip originally, but I've lived in Fort McMurray most of my life. I was born on a land, so I know what it's like to be connected to the universe, and that was one of our teachings as we grew up. It's a complicated process, as my colleague has explained, and it's kind of a difficult thing to take you through what she's wanting, but I'll try. So I want to thank you for being here tonight. And what I want to do, how I want to do this, is take you back in history and then bring you back to where we are today. So I'll do it that way. Most of the First Nations and the Aboriginal people were born on the land, and a lot of our traditions, a lot of our cultural aspirations, and our spirituality is our connection to the universe. Our connection to the universe, and how the air, the water, the whole Mother Earth, and the people themselves, how they live within the universe is all fairly similar. So that was the priority as we grew up. We grew up on the Wood Buffalo National Park, as it's called today, and it's in the Delta, so water is very important to us. So in a very simplistic way, we woke up and there was water all around us. So we were taught to use the water to drink and to use it when we cooked. We traveled in water. So it was our everyday life, and it sustained us as human beings and all the animals and the birds that lived with us. So our life was very, very simple. It was not complicated with a lot of things that we have today. So it was, you know, when you go camping, you're there with your family, and it's a very simple life, and if the water is not polluted, you go and drink it from the stream, creek, or river, or lake. Today, I don't believe that any of us can do that. I'm not sure, but I haven't heard of any place where you can go and drink from you know, the stream. But then that's what we did. So it was very sacred to us. And the other thing that I wanted to explain was about elders. The elders in history, they had an elder for a lot of the First Nations, and the Aboriginal people lived in families, so it's kind of little clans. And within those clans, they had, you know, essentially one elder, one main elder. That main elder had earned the right to be the leader, because they had all the different gifts. They had, you know, they were raised to learn about the spirituality, the sweats, the ceremonies, and the different aspects of life, so that they were able to be the leaders in the community. There were other leaders, the spiritual leaders as well. So in them days, it was very, you know, your role, you acquired your role, you earned the right to be who you were. It's very, very different today. So today, we have different people. We have some elders sitting here, and we know that they have their certain knowledge. So today it's very different. Like the three of us sitting up here, we all have different, you know, knowledge. Cleo is a teacher, Peter's another spiritual leader, and I'm a different leader myself. So in them days, the one elder held the gifts that the three of us have today. So today, it's up to us to take all of the leaders that are within our communities and to work with them, because there's no one person that can do what our elders did in those days. So that's very, very significant today, because a lot of times when people are recognized as elders or as working elders, some people just don't, just by virtue of being an elderly person, they assume that that person that's being recognized over there is not shouldn't be there. But I mean, that's not what we're trying to do today. I think that we need to, like everybody said here, that all of us need to work together, and that's one aspect that for sure the Aboriginal people need to recognize and to work with. So as we grew up and worked with the knowledge and our way of life, water was very, very sacred. How we worked with water was, it was transportation, it was, different ways that we shared. We shared everything that we had. We didn't do what the government is trying to do today, to buy it and sell it, and that's why our life was very simple. It was sharing everything that we had, so everything was sustained, it was sustainable, it was, regulated. We had our, people that enforced the law. We had our people that made the law. We had our people that protected the law, and people that worked with the law. So we had different people within the community that worked with us, and to make life very simple, and to go through that whole process of just being alive. And that was that's how uncomplicated our day was in those days. Then we came to school age, and then we were, put into the residential school. That brought on different teachings to us. One of the good things about that is that we became educated. And then we moved on to early on in life, and then we acquired more skills. So we went into different kind of careers, and as we progressed, our parents were already introduced to the new political system that was here. So the political system was all about voting and choosing a chief and a certain amount of councillors. So there was law with that political system. It was foreign from our own system, because our own system, the people became chiefs because they earned the right to be a chief. And there were councillors as well, the people who helped the chief, and who held council during the day. And sometimes they used to go in the whole council for days. But when they made the decision, that decision lasted for years and years, 25 years. Today, you entertain an issue for 10 minutes, and you make a decision at the end of the day. The next meeting, you're dealing with the same issue. So that's a difference that they have in relation to how, we dealt with decision making then. My father was a counselor for 44 years, so he taught us a lot about politics, and a lot about leading, about our own way of doing things. He was elected, but that didn't give him the right to make a decision for you without going to you and asking you what you felt about the decision. You had to give him feedback, and then he would entertain the idea with the rest of the councillors, and then they'd come up with a decision. In my generation, that was all lost. Everybody, just by virtue of being elected, you had the right to make a decision without coming to talk to me. So that's where we are at today. Our politics have brought us to this situation in many aspects. It's not because I don't think it's out of malice, it's out of intention. It's because that's just the way it is. A lot of our people in politics, I think, when people learn about being leaders, you train, I guess, or you're told, you take training about what it means to be a leader and stuff like that. But in our way, a lot of the leaders were self-taught. So a lot of information a lot of facts weren't part of the equation when they decided to be a leader. So the lack of capacity to be a leader that is recognized within the political system, the foreign political system, and a lot of capacity, the teachings that were within our own political system were also lost. So they were in what you would call limbo. So because of that, our people have not passed on a lot of things to the younger generation. So we grow up and we don't know what it means to be a leader. We don't know what it means to be an elder. We don't know what it means to be a spiritual, spiritual leader. So you have to go out there and learn this. So when we do have to come to this kind of forum and we listen to an expertise presentation that was presented by someone with clear expertise, and then to come to an Aboriginal person and say, what do you think about this? It's almost an impossible question, because the grassroots person that would be sitting here wouldn't have a clue, wouldn't know what to say, because it's such a cultural contrast. It's so different. You have to go into one mindset, and then you have to come to our mindset, and it's really a complicated process. Believe me, because I've tried it for a long, long time, and trying to talk to the audience. You have one foot in each culture. It's really, really a complicated thing, and most of the time you lose people. People fall asleep. But we need to as elders, as working elders like myself, we need to recognize the people like George Patra, like Paul Cyprian, like Cleo, like other people, that are here, that are like Joseph, another, people that are here, our Aboriginal allies that are here, that are, do have the capacity to understand, are working in their own right to do what they think is right. We need to work with them. We can't say that they're going in the wrong direction, because we need to work with all the different Aboriginal people that are in our communities. That includes our elders, that includes the elderly people that have their own experiences when it comes to being on the land, and when it comes to speaking for the right of the Aboriginal people. Everybody has that right to speak, and everybody has that place around the table. The one thing, the challenge for us though, is that people like the younger generation have set the table. Let's say it's like setting a table. So they've set the table for the system, the way the system works. So there's, I don't know how many forks when they, these fancy places you go to, there's forks and knives and spoons and everything. So I mean, that etiquette, that etiquette has to be learned before you know which fork to use and all that stuff. So they're busy learning all that stuff while we're sitting in the back and trying to teach our own people, the elders, and working with our own knowledge, teaching ourselves, getting that training to be an elder. And we're watching all of this. And these people are getting really, really good at it. And like George, you can see how good he is in making presentations and helping people. And his communication skills are really, really great. But the problem is, where are the people who are setting the table for the Aboriginal people? You bring an Aboriginal person into this setting, they wouldn't know what to do. It's a formal setting, it's building, it's a fancy building with nice woodwork, and people are all dressed up. I mean, the Aboriginal person wouldn't know how to transfer their knowledge that they have on the land to that setting. So what we need is our own setting. We need to take you to the environment. We need to take you to a place where everybody is free. Your spirit is free. So your perceptions or your teachings from other things, you clear that out of your head, and you're there with the nature, and you're there with the people that are there with you. And then that's when you hear the stories from the elders and the things that really matter to us. That's when we can tell you for sure the simple things that mean a lot to us. That's when we can share why the water is very important to us. It's life itself. So like my colleague said, there's a lot of people that have lived without food. There's nobody that has lived without water. So, that's the one thing that we need to remember. And for sure, before somebody asks me a question, I wanted to say that my last comment was about how we can work together. As I'm part of the keepers. I kind of keep a low profile because traditional knowledge and how we do this is very sacred for me, and we need to do it in a way that's in a place where it's respected. So I thought one way of reaching the grassroots people, the Aboriginal grassroots people, I can't speak for the grassroots people themselves, but I don't think that's too much different, is that if we take a look at how the Aboriginal people have been, contacted, let's say, through consultation processes. It's always the leaders that are making comments. It's always the same people over and over and over again. Then you wonder why things are not going anywhere, So you don't want to take that away. You want to complement that. So the complement would be, let's figure something out where we can take the people that are here, that are interested. How do we utilize their expertise to come and sit with us? Even if it's going to be, it doesn't have to be a politically correct decision. Somebody said, let's do it. If it has to be done, let's do it. Doesn't matter if we get hung or shot or, what did you say?
Run over the director.
But we need to do something drastic. So if we're going to keep saying, let's work together, where are we going to go? We don't just say, okay, let's do this. Let's go and work with the people, the grassroots people who are there, even if they're recognized as the rebels, as the people who are always causing problems. Well, maybe there's a reason why they're doing that. So if they're causing problems, we need to use that strength, recognize that strength of that person, and say, okay, let's work with you and let's do something. And somebody said, we need to deal with the situation with, action. So action is what we need, and
your first date. Your first date, when you first start.
Pardon me?
When you first start dating, meet.
Like
you were saying.
I don't know, whatever. But that's why it's really. I can't tell what the Aboriginal people can do today, because we have been a forgotten race. We are not included in any of the decisions. We have not ever been in our own right. It's always been within the system. So, trying to get me to say what should have been said when my great-grandfather was alive is kind of impossible. But, we can try. It's never too late. I guess we can go back and say, okay, this is what we've learned so far in our life, and this is what we can do. And I want to thank you.
We should all be at Fort Chip July 1st?
Pardon me?
Do you think we should all meet you at Fort Chippewa on July 1st? Have a picnic?
Yeah, that would be a good place to start. Peter will be there for sure.
January 1st, that way you can drive over there. Do it, make it the fly.
July.
There's more firewood in July.
Thank you again for listening.
Are there any questions? Bob?
Yes, Alice, I attended a meeting in Fort Good Hope on behalf of the keepers, and I was one of the few non-Aboriginal people at the gathering in Fort Good Hope. There were about 85 people. It was held in the school. There were high school students from the 3 high school grades who attended as part of their school and spoke, and elders. So a result of the meeting was another resolution, and one of the people who had come to Alberta and taken training and did surveying, he was a jack of all trades in the community, said to Stephen Cactwee when they talked about a resolution, how many more resolutions are we going to have, you guys? When are we going to do something? And Stephen, who had been the Premier of the Northwest Territories and who'd known George Granjam since they grew up in the same community, was quite put out, because in my experience, having attended also on behalf of the keepers, the Chiefs meeting, the Alberta legislature and the Canadian House of Commons have nothing on the Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, of the Chiefs of Alberta. They can pass resolutions like clockwork, and they can amend, the meeting I attended, they can amend motions on the fly with minimal amount of debate and pass resolutions even if they're 4 pages long, as the one that was handed out today. So resolutions are certainly the stuff of Aboriginal government from my experience, but some Aboriginal band members express problems with resolutions. They seem to be something that's easy to do, but a lot of them are looking for actions. So I guess I'm saying that I saw in the Northwest Territories that same request for action to the political leaders, and their consternation with the idea of action rather than resolutions, the stuff of government.
I agree with the guy that said that resolutions are easily made, and the one reason why I sort of don't agree with resolutions is because it's not really our way. It was never been our way. So, but again, we cannot do away with what we have today. We need to complement it. The way to complement that is to raise the capacity of the people, that tell them that what our way was, teach them what our way used to be, and why resolutions are important. What are they used for? What do they achieve? And then maybe meet somewhere in the middle, because if we're going to assert our Aboriginal and treaty rights and our inherent rights, we need to know our identity as First Nations, as Aboriginal people, and where do those rights come from? They come from us as First Nation.
Why is there a Cree band and a Chip band there? Are they separated, or they live different, or?
They're different.
Yeah, they?
Yeah.
I'm
Because you're Dene, I'm Cree.
No, my dad was Cree, and then my mom was Chip too, so I'm in the middle. That's why I said that.
I just wanted to add something to that. Some years ago, actually it was 19 years ago, I was working in Vancouver at the downtown East Side Community Center. It was called Carnegie Center. It's still there. And it was, it's like in the poorest section of Vancouver, and it's got the poorest post office number in Canada, the economic situation there. And at that time, there was a outcry over the murder of a woman, a Native woman in the area. And a group of us got together, and we had decided to do something because everybody was shocked. And so we have to do something. And so what we did is we had a memorial for this particular woman, but it was also recognizing all the other women who had been murdered, and the missing women as well. And that was 19 years ago, and that was held on Valentine's Day, February 14th. And it's been held every year since. And as a matter of fact, it's grown. There are now marches for the same thing in Edmonton, in Calgary, in Saskatoon, in Regina, in Winnipeg. And I think it's spreading. And it seems to me that that kind of, the feelings of that is you know, you're dealing with intense situations and feelings. And I think what we have an idea here that we want to bring out, and what we would like to do is have a walk that would go from around the Fort McMurray area towards the Bridge to Nowhere. It's a name that was given to an area that in the north of Fort McMurray, and it's sort of a symbolic thing for all the devastation that's been happening in our communities and in our lands and in the north, and not just in the north, it's all over. And for all the murdered, missing women, and you know, other people in terrible situations like that, we are seeing our rivers and our lakes and water that is being contaminated, and we're going to have to look at where are our murdered and missing rivers and watersheds and so on. So this is the sort of thing that we're thinking about. It was brought up by some of our people and our members of our keepers group, and this is something that I'm sort of giving out to you to think about and maybe see in what way can we work together on something like this to bring awareness. So this is just one kind of an approach, and there's many others, and people are working in their own communities on things like stewardship and looking after, you know, what's in your backyard, what's in your own backyard. And I agree with that. You know, we have to start with where we are. And even though, I mean, I personally find it really hard because I work in a job that's very demanding, and I don't really find that I have a lot of extra time to do anything. It's really hard for me. And so, you know, the only time I think I could look forward to actually having time to do something is in the summer. And so this is when we're planning to do this, it's in the summer. So that's just something I wanted to bring out to you and invite you all to be part of this and maybe see what we could do, you know, to make this grow.
Are you saying have a water memorial?
Not a memorial, like a walk to bring awareness.
Water memorial?
It's not necessarily memorial, because I don't want to use that word, because to me it sounds like it's dead, and we don't want our waters to die.
Oh, okay.
Our rivers to die.
Is there anything planned for that next summer for that big meeting? Maybe somebody should bring that up.
For Keepers 4.
something to think about for next.
Did you ask if anything's planned?
Yeah, I
For
know
the
there is
Keepers
one.
4 conference in Saskatchewan, you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, the agenda, I guess it's made out, and all they're doing now is just look for a couple more speakers, presenters, I guess. It's all made out, it's planned, it's been planned since last year, so it's ready to go now this year.
What's the
We can
date?
go through it, and
Where is it, Peter?
it's in Hatchet Lake, Saskatchewan, on August 19th and to the 23rd, I believe. It's in August
Where's Hatchet?
19th or 18th, maybe.
Where's Hatchet Lake?
It's way far north, Saskatchewan.
No.
It's about a
Meadow
15-hour
Lake,
drive north of Prince Albert.
Oh,
And
yeah, I've been that far up
they're
there.
scheduled, last
Very
year
nice.
they were scheduled to have 500 people show up. And it got cancelled because all of a sudden someone got, Health Canada announced someone there with H1N1. So the person is okay, of course. Yeah, and so it's planned for August, still go. And if you need more information, Harvey or one of us here, just ask us give us your email. We could email you the information, and it's going to be a good conference. A lot of food,
It's on that
a
brochure.
lot of hand games.
One of the things that I just thought about is the sacred place where they used to pray for water, and that was Lake St. Anne. Maybe.
I'm not too familiar with Lake St. Anne, but I went there once. But from what I heard, it was some. Sorry?
It's just, like the advertising.
Some native persons had a vision of Saint Anne, I guess.
It's sacred lake for elders, all of.
So this is what happened apparently, and now they have a pilgrimage. So but there's a lot of people
Started like that?
when I went there was a lot of people go there.
Oh, yeah, big.
It'd be a good place to
That'd be a good place to kind of advertise the keepers, wouldn't it?
yeah.
So is this
Would
thing
be
in
awesome
Saskatchewan
place.
a keepers conference or whatever you're gonna call it, program?
Sorry.
Oh,
Is
it's
it a
actually
keepers?
on our brochure,
Yeah?
gives the date, it's Wollaston Lake.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Wollaston.
it's the Hatchet Lake is the, band.
Okay, so
Yeah. But, is there somebody else that also had a question over there or a comment?
Well, it'll be on our website too, and the website address is on the brochure. Just go to Keepers of the Water and you can get into the website.
go back to the walk that Cleo mentioned that we plan to have. It's more for